Okay, so tonight, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to be continuing with our series on the Leshem, Shevo, V'Chaloma, and Rav Shlomo Elyashiv, Tzimtzum Aleinu. And in this fourth shir, we're going to be discussing a topic which is really a continuation of last week's topic. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the sugya of Tzimtzum, of the contraction, the withdrawal, or the concealment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol, and we'll see that the different ways of interpreting the word or translating the word Tzimtzum itself represent different shitos in what exactly Tzimtzum represents. But it's a continuation of last week's shir that, as we're going to see, the Leshem, in spite of the historical misplacement of his shita, meaning to say the Leshem's shita in Tzimtzum has been utilized by particular individuals for ideological purposes in determining the true interpretation, quote-unquote, of Kabbalah Sa'arizal. Historically, we're going to see that the shita that has been applied to the Leshem is not actually what the Leshem says. And that if we look deep enough at what the Leshem is saying, he carves out a space that is not like any other opinion with regards to the nature of Tzimtzum. And this is going to be directly in line with what we saw last week with regards to how the Leshem treats the entirety of the Kabbalah of the Arizal, in the sense that, unlike other Mikubalim, the Ramchal and the Vilna Gaon, or at least the way the Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma was interpreting those Mikubalim, that the Leshem holds that the Inyanim, the Partsufim, the Tziros, the processes described in Kabbalah Arizal were actual, they were real. They were literal. They were not simply metaphoric or figurative in need of interpretation. But then the Leshem doubles back, and he says that in spite of the fact that everything is literal as it is written in the words of the Arizal, based on the words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Zohar HaKadosh, based on the writings of Shlomo HaMelech and Shir HaShirim and Torah's Moshe, in spite of the fact that it's all literal as it is written, the Leshem states that it is literal in a way that we have no possibility of conceiving of. That yes, we understand the literality of these things existing, but we have no access to the mahus. We have no access to understanding what these things actually are. So the Leshem, in describing the process of Kabbalah Arizal, comes onto a shita where he says it's both mamish, it's both real and literal, and at the same point it's figurative, it's kavyachol. That in a sense, because it's real, at the end of the day, all we have is the capacity to understand it as a mashal. And we're going to see that this paradoxical space of mamish kavyachol, of being both literal and figurative at the same point, is going to inform the Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma shita in the sugya of Tzimtzum as well. Now, before we get started, it's very important to understand that in trying to teach or show the shita hamiyuchedes, the particular opinion of the Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma, we're utilizing a way of understanding that is associated with what the Mekubalim would call bina. That bina, often described as the left brain in the sense that it is the space of distinction and distinguishment, bina is the ability to discern the differences between one thing and the other. Hamavchin ben yom uvein laila, hanoisen l'sechvi bina, that God has given to the sechvi understanding, bina, lahavchin ben yom uvein laila. So we see that the tchuna of bina, the intellectual or epistemological mode of thinking associated with bina, is one that is mavchin. It makes distinctions between one thing and the other. Now, bina, as we saw in the shitos of Rav Kook and Reish Milin, and we're going to see next week, Be'ezras Hashem, when we discuss chasadim and gvuros in the Leshem, bina is associated with severity and gvura. It is the chush of shmiya, shma b'ni musar avicha, listen to the words of your mother. The mother is going to be associated with bina. And Chazal give us a cloud that trei kali loy mishta'i, that two voices cannot be heard at once. That when you're utilizing the mayach of bina, when you're utilizing the left brain, each opinion needs to stand on its own. There's no room for klaliyut, there's no room for generality and everything being nichlal together. Kabbalah typically demands of us that we use the mayach of chachma, the right brain, the re'iyah, the vision that sees everything b'klaliyus yachad, that sees everything in one fell swoop, showing all the shitos being part and parcel of each other. For the sake of showing the shita of the Leshem and not allowing the Leshem to be subsumed by the other shitos of the Mikubalim, I am going to be stressing the differences between the Leshem and other Mikubalim, in spite of the fact that when seen from the vision of Chachma, when looked at from the tachazi, the come and see that Kabbalah demands of us, in truth, there's really no machlokas. This has been described at length in English in the Nefesh Tzimtzum by Rav Avi Noam Frankel, who translated the Nefesh HaChaim, and it's expressed explicitly and at length in the writings of Rav Moshe Shatz and his students, Rav Yitzchak Morgenstern and Rav Yisrael Wilk Shlita, that they show that all the shitos and all the differences that abide between the machlokas of Tzimtzum, in reality they're the results of historical misunderstandings, which are part and parcel of something described as Galus HaTorah, the exile of the Torah, which is necessary. We see this in the Hakdama to Likutei Moharan by the Torah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We see this in the writings of the Gra and in the Zohar at length, that one of the punishments that we experience as a result of Chetz Eitz Hadas is the fact that the Torah is going to operate within the realm of machlokas, even Torah Sasod, when in reality all voices within Torah Sasod are speaking towards one unified parsuf, one unified klal. Nevertheless, in order to teach the Leshem Shevo v'Chaloma, who is the Leshem and not some other Mekubal, we're going to highlight in this year, through the Moach of Bina, through the left brain of constriction and particularity, we're going to highlight the differences that abide, in spite of the fact that we can give this year from another perspective, from the Moach of Chachma, which would see everything as agreeing to the Shitos that the Leshem is describing. Now, the Arizal, S'chusi Yagon Aleinu, in answering the perennial question that the Rishonim were asking, that the philosophers were asking, how does the infinite interact with the finite? How does the one interact with the many? How do we find riboy and multiplicity emerging from unity without unity losing its unified capacity? How does the infinite maintain its infinite capacity in spite of the fact that it manifests in finitude and multiplicity? On a certain level, these are the questions that we've been asking throughout the Sefer of Reish Milin. And the same Yesodos, the same Sugyos, and the same Yesodos that Rav Kook was utilizing, which in my opinion he learned from the Leshem Shevo v'Chaloma, the Leshem is going to be introducing when he brings us to the Sugya of Tzimtzum. But the Arizal's answer to this question of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world was the answer of Tzimtzum, a contraction or a concealment or a removal, again, depending on how you learn the Sugya. Now, the Sugya of Tzimtzum is not only the most popular aspect of the teachings of the Arizal, behind perhaps Tikkun Olam, which is misunderstood in every possible way. Tzimtzum has enjoyed the most treatment in both religious camps, in Torah HaKadosha, as well as in secular philosophical speculations as to the philosophical offerings that Kabbalah Arizal offers. So that the Sugya of Tzimtzum is even a Sugya that has expressed its light into spaces outside of Torah. And on a certain level, just this points to the value of the Sugya of Tzimtzum, that it can shine its light even in darker places. Now, for the Arizal, the question of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, the answer was Tzimtzum, that Hashem Kavyachol, before the creation of the world, before limitation took root, before there was space for anything other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or Ein Sof, the light, the infinite light, the light without end, which is representative of a secondary level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're never quite talking about Etzem, which must remain at the forefront of our minds when we're discussing these sugyos. That even when we talk about Tzimtzum, we're not talking about Ein Sof Kavyachol, in and of itself, which we have no access to. We're talking about Or Ein Sof, which is a secondary level after HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decided to reveal himself to creation. Now, the Arizal writes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitzamtzim himself. He contracted himself, he concealed himself, or he removed himself, kavyachol. Now, what the Arizal seems to be implying is that prior to the emergence of the world, the potential space of being was saturated entirely by the infinite and annihilating light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the space of this light, it was indifferent. There was no distinction between one thing and the other. Everything was subsumed by infinitude, by the all-annihilating capacity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light to take up all space. In order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal a world that operates as other than God, Kavyachol, there was a need to be mitzamtzim, to contract that light, to leave a space devoid of that light. Or, as we're going to see, to leave a space where that light was concealed. Now, this Tzimtzum, this original act of creation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired to apply to the world so that existence and all of its limitation could come into being, there's a question as to what actually took place. The Arizal says HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Metzamtzem, and he removed his infinite light from a particular area. That particular area becomes known as the Chalal HaPanui, the vacant space or the voided space that is now devoid of the annihilating light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now, because it's devoid of the annihilating light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol, there can be space for creation that is separate than HaKadosh Baruch Hu to take root and begin to take on its own individual existence, Kaviyachol. Now, this Tzimtzum that the Arizal says in the beginning of Eitz Chaim, which moved the light of Ein Sof to the sides in order to leave a circle, a Chalal HaPanui, the vacant space, so there has been a historical machlokas as to whether this act of Tzimtzum, this contraction, this removal, this concealment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light was meant to be interpreted literally as an actual act on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol in his infinitude, or whether it was meant to be interpreted figuratively. Now, for those who wanted to interpret the Tzimtzum figuratively and in a metaphoric way, instead of saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually removed his infinite presence from the space of existence in some sort of ontological act that creates an actual voided space, the way they interpret it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu concealed his light, that Hashem didn't remove his infinitude from the existence and from the space of creation, but rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu limited and concealed that light so that all existence is apparently devoid of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Apparently being the key word, because it's in its essence that's not true. Because the light is still there, the light is still annihilating everything, so that everything in its essence is Ein Od Milvado, and the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But epistemologically speaking, according to the consciousness of human beings and according to our understanding from our own perspective, mitzidenu, the world appears to be individual and a self-sustained existence. But the opinion that the Tzimtzum was figurative and lo kipshuto tells us that in reality, if you penetrate into the depths of being enough, you'll come to find that the light is simply concealed and not removed. Now, in response to those opinions that saw Tzimtzum as lav kipshuto, as not an actual departure or removal or a siluk of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather just a concealment and a hiding of that light, there were individual mikubalim, individual shitos, who saw the Tzimtzum act as something that was kipshuto. It was meant to be interpreted literally. Now, the individual, the tzaddik, who becomes the model or the spokesperson for the kipshuto shita of understanding Tzimtzum as an actual act that took place and removed the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol, is going to be Rav Immanuel Chayrechi, Schulsi Yaganalenu, the Mechaber of the Mishnah's Chasidim, which is one of the most important svarim that summarize Kabbalas HaArizal. Recently, it was put out with a remarkable perush by Rav Michal Bornstein, a student of Rav Moshe Shapiro. It's a highly recommended sefer. But nevertheless, the Mishnah's HaChasidim in his Kuntris Yosher Levav, when discussing the sugya of Tzimtzum, he states that it's imperative that we understand Tzimtzum kipshuto as a literal act, whereby HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows for there to be room devoid of his actual presence, so that existence can take on its own individual sense. And after the Tzimtzum, the Arizal tells us, L'kuli Alma, there takes place the emergence of a kav. After HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows for this Chalal HaPanui, this voided space, there's a re-entrance of a measured level of infinite light, referred to as the kav Ein Sof, as the ray of infinite light, which then reanimates that space, reanimates that void, and infuses it and engages it with the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, we have the question of what Tzimtzum actually was. Was it an actual removal, like the Mishnah's HaChasidim and like the Mikdash Melech on the Zohar HaKadosh, and possibly like other Mechabrim? Or was it lav kipshuto? Was it figurative and simply a concealment of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which when penetrated deeply enough is shown to simply be an apparent occlusion of that light, where in truth the infinite light animates everything, giving life to everything, like the Shomer Amunim HaKadmon, Rav Yosef Igris, and like the Meforshe HaArizal, and like Hasidus, and like the Balatanya in Shara Yichud Ve'amuna, and Rav Tzadok in Sefer HaZachronos, v'chulei. Now, historically speaking, although the Vilna Gaon, although the Gra never really explicitly stated a valid or clear opinion as to the nature of Tzimtzum, nevertheless, it has been applied to his opinion, or applied to his name, or reflected in his name, that the Vilna Gaon held that Tzimtzum was kipshuto. That the Vilna Gaon, in response to Chasidus, in response to the Balatanya, that the Gra felt that one of the issues with Chasidus was that they misunderstood the pasuk of Malei Chol Haaretz Chvodo, that the entirety of existence is filled with the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in contradistinction to the Hasidic interpretation as expressed in the Balatanya and the writings of Hasidei Chabad, the Gra is said to have interpreted Tzimtzum as an actual event based on certain diukim and writings that have been revealed in the Asara Klalim, which have been disclosed and commented on by certain thinkers. It was assumed that the Vilna Gaon held that Tzimtzum was kipshuto, in the sense that the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kavyachol removed from existence, and the only relationship that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with existence is one of hashgacha, one of governance, one that we can't fully understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu relates with us, but nevertheless, in spite of the distance between this world and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's still some sort of relationship in the sense of spooky action at a distance. Now, for whatever historical reason that this opinion has been leveled at the Vilna Gaon, most probably, and according to most interpreters of the Sugya, because the Vilna Gaon was coming to fight against Hasidus, so they needed to find a reason to show why the Vilna Gaon disagreed with Hasidus. Nevertheless, the Vilna Gaon has been considered and assumed to be the model of Tzimtzum Kipshuto, whereby the world is not actually filled with the annihilating infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that Tzimtzum represents something literal that took place and a removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, when it comes to the machlokas over Tzimtzum, and again, we're using the Mayach of Bina, so we're stressing the disagreements, in spite of the fact that there's a way to learn the Sugya which shows that everybody is in agreement. One of the rayos, historically speaking, as to the opinion of the Vilna Gaon in Tzimtzum has been the fact that when you learn the sugya of Tzimtzum in the writings of the Leshem, Shevo, v'Chaloma, who, as we said in the first number of Shirim, is ostensibly considered a student of the Vilna Gaon in Kabbalah, in spite of the fact that he never met him, we find that the Leshem, Shevo, v'Chaloma specifically states explicitly, very, very much with no room for misunderstanding, that Tzimtzum was kipshuto, that Tzimtzum was a literal event, in the same way that the Yosher Levav and the Mishnah's Chasidim interpreted it. That when it comes to the disagreement of Tzimtzum between the Shomer Amunim HaKadmon, Rav Yosef Igris, and the camp that held that it was figurative and metaphoric and not actual, and simply a concealment of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Leshem sides with the Mishnah's HaChasidim, Rav Immanuel Chayreki, who feels that it was an actual event whereby the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was removed and not simply concealed. And when people see that the Leshem Shevo v'Chaloma held that Tzimtzum was kipshuto, they point and they say, here we have a raya that the Vilna Gaon held Tzimtzum was kipshuto, because if his student, Kavyachol, Peh Achar Peh, the Peh Shlishi to the Vilna Gaon, in spite of the fact that there was no biographical relationship between the two of them, if we see that the Leshem Shevo v'Chaloma holds that Tzimtzum is kipshuto, explicitly as it's written in the Sfarim, so then it's clear that the Vilna Gaon held Tzimtzum was kipshuto. And what I would like to posit in this shir is that yes, the Leshem Shevo v'Chaloma says that Tzimtzum was kipshuto, but when you read the Makoros of the Leshem, it's abundantly clear that kipshuto for the Leshem, that literal for the Leshem, like we saw last week, does not mean literal the way that people want to interpret literal. That when the Leshem says that Tzimtzum was literal, all he means to say is that, like every other aspect of the Kabbalah of the Arizal, these things exist in a way that is incomprehensible and infinitely removed from our consciousness and our ability to understand their essence. But nevertheless, we believe deeply that everything the Arizal wrote, the same way the Rashbi wrote and the same way Shir Hashirim wrote, is literal in a way that at the end of the day we can only understand as figurative. So when the Leshem says that Tzimtzum is kipshuto, like the Mishnah Chasidim, which implies a certain removal of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what the Leshem is actually saying is something very different, which in the end of the day is going to be much closer to the Shita of Shelo kipshuto, to show us that the infinite light is still present, and that it is impossible to fathom that there can be an actual removal of the light of Ein Sof, that there can be an actual removal of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite presence from any aspect of existence. So that in spite of the fact that the Leshem sees Tzimtzum Kipshuto as a literal event, in contradistinction to Chasidus and the other Meforshim who follow Rav Yosef Igrus and Shomer Amunim HaKadmon, nevertheless, Kipshuto for the Leshem results in a completely different conception of existence than those who try and take the Leshem Shita and apply it to their ideological purposes of showing the misnagdic approach to existence. Now, we're going to look at a number of sources in the Leshem that describe his Shita on Tzimtzum. The second introduction that we need in order to understand what the Leshem is saying in Tzimtzum is something that we discussed in the Shir on Os Aleph and Sefer Reish Milin. That, like Rav Kook points out, in the name of Rabbeinu Azriel, Megarona, the Rebbe of the Ramban in Kabbalah, according to the Arizal, according to Rav Chaim Vital, one of the authentic sources of Kabbalah prior to the revelation of the teachings of the Ramban and the Arizal, that Rabbeinu Azriel in a Sefer, Eser Sfiros B'derach She'ela V'tshuva, Rabbeinu Azriel postulates a very simple but fundamental concept, that in order for the infinite to be truly infinite, it must have the capacity to manifest as finite as well. That in order for the infinite to be truly unlimited, it must have the capacity to manifest in limit as well. In the Lashon of Rabbeinu Azriel, in order for the koyach habilti gvul, for the potency, the potential, and the power that is unlimited and infinite to be truly infinite, it must have the capacity to manifest in koyach hagvul, in the power of limitation. To the point that this paradox of the unlimited being able to manifest in limitation results in a third category of koyach hagvul bebilti gvul, the potential towards limitation that remains unlimited. Now, Rabbeinu Azriel becomes the crowning jewel of the Shita of Rav Kook, as the Nazir HaKadosh pointed out, and we saw in the beginning shirim of Reish Milin. And my postulation is that Rav Kook learned this from the Leshem, because this sugya of Rabbeinu Azriel and koyach hagvul mebilti gvul, that the infinite must have the power kaviyachol to manifest in limitation, this is a deeply significant sugya for the Leshem, expressed multiple times, and in particular in the letters that we discussed last week between the Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma and Rav Naftali Hertz, who was the Mechaber of Siddur Hagra Beniglu Benister, that the Leshem, in trying to describe his Shita of Tzimtzum, says explicitly in these letters that are printed in the back of Rav Moshe Shatz's new Sefer, Tarsha Shoam V'Yishpeh, that the Leshem explicitly states that his entire conception of Tzimtzum is rooted in the concept of koyach hagvul mebilti gvul, of the capacity towards limitation that exists within the infinite, as described in the writings of Rabbeinu Azriel. Because what we're going to see with the Leshem is that, yes, Tzimtzum is kipshuto, but Tzimtzum is not removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather Tzimtzum is a disclosure or a revelation of a certain power within the infinite that allows for there to be a concealment of the infinite. That Tzimtzum is the revelation of a concealing power that allows existence to appear devoid of the animating and infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That Tzimtzum, contrary to the typical understanding of literal Tzimtzum as a removal, that for the Leshem, Tzimtzum is actually a revelation and a disclosure of a particular strength from within the infinite that allows existence to appear according to our minds as epistemological subjects, as being separate and apart from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That for the Leshem, in truth, all that Tzimtzum is this disclosure of the limiting power that the infinite contains within itself. Because in order for the infinite to remain infinite in all matters of infinitude, the infinite must have the capacity to manifest in limitation. And this capacity to manifest in limitation is, according to the Leshem, based on the writings of Rabbeinu Azriel of Gerona, as expressed in the writings of Rav Meir ibn Gabbai, in particular the Kuntras Derech HaEmunah, is the ability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to manifest in a way that appears to be concealed from infinitude. So that yes, Tzimtzum is kipshuto, it's something that actually took place. But this thing that actually took place is not chas v'shalom, a removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's a further expression of the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that yes, Tzimtzum can be understood as a literal event, but this event does not take away from the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, it adds to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu because it shows the infinite possibility of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that when we understand the sugya of the Leshem properly, we can say that Tzimtzum is kipshuto in the sense that the entirety of the writings of the Arizal is kipshuto, in the sense that they exist in a way that is devoid of our understanding. But it is not a removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which results in a void and an existentially deserted space devoid of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chas v'shalom. But rather it is simply Hashem himself concealing himself with himself, kavyachol. That Hashem reveals a power of concealment that is nothing but a power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that when paradoxically a person penetrates deeply enough into the sugya of Tzimtzum, the Tzimtzum itself, concealment itself, becomes a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that what appears to be void and null and concealed from the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is nothing but a further expression, a further instantiation of the infinite capacity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to manifest within limitation as well. Now, the first makor that we're going to look at, in the words of the Leshem, is going to be in Sefer HaBiurim, in Drushay Igulim V'Yosher, Anaf Aleph, Os Beis. Now, I posted this source as translated, but here the Leshem is going to express explicitly his shita when it comes to Tzimtzum. And he says as follows, Hine be'inyan ha-Tzimtzum v'hakav, with regards to the sugya of Tzimtzum and the ray of light and the ray of infinitude that descends into the world after Tzimtzum, as described in the Arizal, Asher Giloi ha-Arizal b'devarav asher lefanenu, that is expressed in the words of the Arizal as they are before us. There have been a number of holy individuals who have attempted to understand this. Whether Tzimtzum is to be considered an actual literal event, or it's to be considered a figurative metaphor that points towards something beyond our comprehension. And here the Leshem is referencing the Shomer Amunim, Rav Yosef Igris, who in his fundamental Sefer Shomer Amunim Akadmon brings down 11 reasons why it would be actually usser and kfira to assume that Tzimtzum was kipshuto, that there was an actual removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the Leshem says, in spite of the fact that there have been a number of tzaddikim who say that there would be an isser to say that Tzimtzum was kipshuto, as is apparent from Rav Yosef Igris in his Sefer Shomer Amunim. Amnan, however, Harav Hagadol Rav Immanuel Chayrechi, Bal Mishnas HaChasidim, B'Sifra Yosher Levav, Mian B'chol Dvarav Bazeh, he ignores this entirely. V'daisa hu shat Tzimtzum hu kipshuto mamish, and his opinion is that Tzimtzum is a literal event. The Amar, and the Leshem continues and he says, she'ein lipshot b'dvarim halalu mitzad hachakira klal. That this sugya has no room for intellectual discussions or discernments. Because like we saw last week, the Leshem is asking, what purpose is there for intellectual gymnastics in a sugya that is completely removed from our capacity to fully understand? And we can always say, shahagam shehu kipshuto, that even though Tzimtzum is kipshuto and literal, im kol zeh, hinehum b'mehus ne'elam kazeh, ad shekol hachakiros asher na'asu lo shaychu lo b'klal. That we can still say that in spite of the fact that it's literal, nevertheless, any intellectual understanding we have with regards to the sugya is completely null and void because we have no access to the essence of it. Like the Leshem said last week with regards to the nature of Kabbalah Sa'arizal, we know what it is and we know that it is literal, but we have no capacity of grasping its essence. So the Leshem says there's no problem saying Tzimtzum is kipshuto, that the concealment or the constriction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light is literal, because we have no idea what literal actually means. And he continues to say, Ki ein lanu havchana b'chol elu ha'anyanim, because we have no full distinction or discernment when it comes to the nature of these things. So the Leshem is already setting us up to understand his shita, that yes, Tzimtzum is kipshuto in the same way that the Partsufim are kipshuto, and that the Kabbalah of the Arizal is literal in a way that we have no access to. But we need to believe in the value of the sugyos of the Leshem, of the Arizal. And the Arizal would not teach us something that was not literal. The Arizal would not come on to the sugya of Tzimtzum had it been just a metaphor like we saw last week. So in trying to understand how Tzimtzum can be both literal and at the same point allow for an understanding of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be present everywhere, the Leshem says that it's literal, but it's literal in a way that we have no ability to understand, as we saw last week. Now, that shita of the Leshem is expressed later on in Sefer HaBiurim, is expressed in the letters that the Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma wrote to Rav Naftali Hertz, and it's expressed in Sefer HaKlalim. But we're going to move on to a second stage of a makor in the Leshem, where he now attempts to describe what this act of Tzimtzum was. Once we state that it's literal in a way that cannot be fully understood, so that saying it's literal does not remove the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the world, but rather emphasizes and deepens HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ability to manifest with limitation as well, the Leshem is going to attempt to describe what Tzimtzum actually was, and this is going to bring us to the sugya that we discussed previously of Rabbeinu Azriel, of the Tzimtzum being the disclosure of limitation, meaning not a concealment or a removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol, but the revelation of the power of Hashem to appear as if he is concealed. So that concealment at the end of the day is simply another way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself. The Leshem writes in Sefer Hakdamos U'Sha'arim, this is going to be in Sharvav Parak Beis, he says as follows, he says, V'hinei inyan hatzimtzum. Now when we understand the concept of tzimtzum atzmo, hana'aseh b'chol elyon, that takes place in every elevated aspect of the Kabbalah of the Arizal, hu be'emes sod amuk nora me'od. This is in truth a very deep and concealed secret. Ve'ein rishus lehitbonen bo klal. And we don't really have permission to contemplate or try and understand this sugya. Umikol shekain laha'alos al haksav. And all the more so to write it. Va'al kagon zeh ukayotze bazeh. And with regards to this and other matters like this, Chazal have told us in Brachos Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, Bischar v'yistar Moshe panav zachal cluster panim, that in the merit that Moshe Rabbeinu turned his face away from the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning in merit of the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu recognized that there's a limit of what we can understand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, zachal cluster panim, he was zocha to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So paradoxically speaking, by maintaining the awareness that we cannot truly understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu's essence, we're zocha to a taste of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's essence. Ubeschar ki yireh, and in the merit of the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of looking at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Zacha v'yireyav, migeshes alav, that Moshe Rabbeinu merited that they were afraid to approach him. Beschar mehebit, in the merit of the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid to gaze at the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Zacha uletmunas Hashem yabit, that paradoxically speaking, because Moshe Rabbeinu respected the limitation of the human being's capacity to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the nature of the essential concealment that abides within all of reality, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to actually understand certain things. And that's what it's written in Mishlei, Kvod Elokim Hester Davar, that the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the concealment of matters. Now here the Leshem lets us in on a certain autobiographical impulse, which aligns with what we discussed in the first year and the second year, that for the Leshem, his Shita in Kabbalah was unlike other Meforshim because he revealed everything there was to be revealed, because he saw our particular historical moment as a time when things were permissible to be revealed that were not revealed previously. The Leshem says as follows, he says, Amnan, nevertheless, ba'asher she'en darchi listom ela lefaresh, because my way is not to conceal, but rather to reveal. Ki kol ma shechaneni eloikim meta'alumos chachma, because everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has disclosed to me from the concealment of his wisdom, hu rak lehotziam laor. The only purpose, the Leshem says, that Hashem has revealed secrets to me is so that I can reveal them to the world. Ulezos ramazti gam be'inyan hanoira hazeh gam kem bekama makomos. And therefore I have been allowed to talk about this concept of Tzimtzum in multiple places. And he continues and he says, Uba'asher shelevaer omek inyano bepratiyus, and because we cannot describe the sugya of Tzimtzum in all of its particularity, because it would take too much time, it's efshar lezos lo nedaber ata ela bepashtus ha'inyan levad. Now we're only going to be discussing the simple understanding of this matter. Ki b'chol inyan yesh omek upshat, because in every concept, in every sugya, there's depth and there's the simple meaning. Nigle v'nister, the concealed and the revealed. V'hem mat'imim zeh imzeh, and they are unified and they are aligned one with the other. U'mechavnim zeh bazeh, and they are applied to one another, and they are focused in one another. V'lo od ela shehakol holech achar apshat. Here the Leshem is following the Shita of the Vilna Gaon as expressed by Rav Menachem Mendel Mishklav in his Hakdama to the Parish Hagon on Mishlei, that if a person cannot describe Sod al pi pshat, they have no access to Sod. That if a person cannot describe the secrets in a simple language, then they have no access to the secrets themselves. Because pashtus and simplicity, like Rabbi Nachman taught us and like Rabbi Nassan taught us, whose Yortzeit is tonight, the depth of everything is the simple understanding of things. So Leshem says, I'm going to understand the depth of the matter, the simplicity of the matter, the simple understanding of Tzimtzum, when in reality it's also the depth of the matter. And the Leshem continues and he says, Ki inyan ha-tzimtzum, the concept of tzimtzum, shehu histalkus va'aliyas ha'or lamala, which is the elevation and the removal of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu above from the space that it was previously saturating. Kvar amarnu la'el in Shar Hey Parak Aleph, we already stated above in the 5th Shar in Parak Aleph, she'ein ha'kavana she'nishar lamata panui v'rekani mikol v'kol, that the intention is not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God forbid, left a space below that was devoid and vacant and empty from everything, from the light of infinitude, from the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki la'olam hu she'ein ha'edar hachleti b'shum makom, v'lo haya v'lo yihya la'olam ha'edar hachleki b'shum zman. Kimo shekasav ha'Rambam v'kama kedushay elyon imo she'ein rekus b'shum makom kanal b'shar ha'e perak aleph. Because the Leshem states over there in Shar Hey Parak Aleph that there is no concept such as emptiness, that everything is perpetually saturated, that because the entirety of existence abides within the infinite, annihilating, saturating light of infinitude, of Or Ein Sof, of the light without limit, to claim that there's an empty space that is ontologically void is kafira. The Leshem says that the Chalal HaPanui is not empty, God forbid. There's nothing empty. Everything is animated with the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Tzimtzum Kipshuta doesn't mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God forbid, removed his light and left an empty space, because there's no emptiness whatsoever. However, Inyan HaTzimtzum, so what is Tzimtzum? What do you mean when we say it's literal? The Leshem says, Hinehu atzmo metzius gamkein. Tzimtzum itself, in its literality, is an expression. It's an existence. It's a presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hainu ki hinehu rak bechinas koach prati echad. That the disclosure of Tzimtzum is nothing but a particular strength and power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hainu ki hu koach prati echad hamachshich umastir es or umagvilo. It's a disclosure of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's power that conceals the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and limits it to a certain extent. That Tzimtzum itself is a positive assertion of the infinite. And this is clear in Rabbi Nachman in Torah Samach Daled, and it's clear in the Balatanya in Parak Chaf Aleph in Tanya, that the Tzimtzum is this paradoxical expression of limitation on behalf of the infinite, so that the infinite Kavyachol is limiting itself. That Tzimtzum is nothing but the disclosure of concealment, and that concealing power is nothing but an expression of infinitude, so that everything that appears to be finite is nothing but a different iteration of infinitude itself. And the makor that all of these tzaddikim use is the lashon of Chazal and Medrash Rabbah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid himself kahadein kamsa de levushe mineyubei, like the locust whose external skeleton emerges from within itself. That like the locust whose shell is connected to its body, so that which appears to be the external guard and the external shell is nothing but a part of the essence of its body, so too Tzimtzum is nothing but the externalization of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that concealment is just a new iteration of everything that is unlimited. And that darkness is just a new iteration of light. And the Leshem continues and he says, V'hu b'chinas mesach ha'omed lifnei ha'or. And this aspect of Tzimtzum, that is the limiting power that emerges out of the unlimited and is part and parcel of the unlimited, is nothing but a particular power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to appear as if he is limited. So here, we already have a better understanding of what the Leshem is coming to say. Yes, Tzimtzum is kipshuto. Yes, it is literal in the same way that all the writings of the Arizal are literal. But it is not literal in the sense that it is a removal of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu chas v'shalom, resulting in a voided existential space that is abysmal because it lacks any animating and annihilating light of infinitude. But rather, the Chalal HaPanoi and the space of existence is nothing but a new iteration of the Koyach HaGvul, the limiting power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which in order for the infinite to remain infinite, it must be able to manifest itself in finitude. So that paradoxically speaking, Tzimtzum is nothing but a new revelation of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that what appears to be separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is part and parcel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the impossible paradox that says that the infinite is concealing itself through infinity. The same halacha that tells us that we can't make a bracha by covering our head with our hand because a person cannot be a mechitza for themselves applies to the sugya of Tzimtzum, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol is concealing himself through himself, so that when a person contemplates enough on the sugya of Tzimtzum and discloses the fact that Tzimtzum and limitation is nothing but a further presencing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then saying Tzimtzum is kipshuto is not a problem. Because Tzimtzum Kipshuto simply means that the infinite has the power to manifest in limitation. And one source that brings this out as clearly as possible is where the Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma and Sefer HaKlalim, where I didn't bring this in the translated Makoros, but this is going to be in Klali Hispashtus V'Stalkus Klal Yudchas Anaf Hey. The Leshem Shevo V'Chaloma says as follows. He says, Ach da v'havein. A person has to know and understand. Ki kol zeh. This entire sugya that the Leshem is coming off of. Hinehu be'emes, in truth, It comes from the Omek Sod HaTzimtzum. It comes from the deep secret of Tzimtzum. V'harei haya kol Sod HaTzimtzum b'toch or ein sof atzmo be'emtziuso kenoda. That the entire sugya of Tzimtzum, that the Leshem describes as being literal, because it's the revelation of the concealing power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite power to manifest infinitude as well. It takes place in the middle. And the Arizal and Eitz Chaim points out, he draws a picture of a circle, and there's a point in the circle to show that this Tzimtzum took place within the center of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's specifically the center that cannot hold. It's specifically in the center of things that we appear to find an absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Leshem has an incredible tie. She says, what's the inyan of Be'emtziuso? What does it mean that the Tzimtzum took place in the center of the Or Ein Sof Kavyachol? Hu Kavyachol betokef ikuso de bechinas Ein Sof. In the fullness of the qualitative expression of Ein Sof, the fullest manifestation of Ein Sof itself, Hinehu ba'atzmo nasa hatzimtzum, because the fullest expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is his capacity Kavyachol to manifest within limitation, like we said over and over again in the Sefer Reish Milin. That the deepest expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol is his ability to show that even within limitation and finitude, the light of the infinite can abide and exist, so that at the end of the day, even that which is finite and limited is disclosed to be a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Leshem continues and he says, Shehu hafcho kavyachol, the revelation of the Tzimtzum, which apparently represents the opposite of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, takes place within the center of HaKadosh Baruch Hu kavyachol. V'na'aseh hatzimtzum be'or ein sof atzmo, and the Tzimtzum take place within ein sof atzmo. V'chein omed bo la'olam, and it stands there. So that the Tzimtzum Kipshuto is not a contradiction to the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather it is a full manifestation of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hu kavyachol aderech shnei hafachim b'nosa echad. And the Leshem, aware of the contradictory postulates that he's saying, in the sense that Tzimtzum represents the ability of the infinite to be finite without losing its infinitude, or that Tzimtzum represents the ability of the unlimited to become limited without losing its unlimited nature. This is Shnei Hafachim B'nosa Echad. These are two opposite postulates within one concept, which simply point us back to the Razid Demeim Nusa, which we discussed last week, of the impossible paradox of the two opposites that abide within Ein Sof and Kedusha at all times. He calls gufa hu be'emes gamkein rak b'mechinas Ein Sof, because the Tzimtzum itself is nothing but the expression of Ein Sof. She'ein maniya lefanav, because there is no prevention in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'omed la'olam koach ha'gvul bebilti gvul b'hametzios yachad, and perpetually, and this is an explicit representation of the Shita of Rabbeinu Azriel, that perpetually the unlimited capacity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one with the limited capacity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the concept of two opposites operating at once. So that when we understand the Shita of Tzimtzum of the Leshem, yes, he says Tzimtzum is Kipshuto. Yes, Tzimtzum is literal, like the Mishnahs HaChasidim, and not like Chasidus, and not like all the other interpreters of the Kabbalah of the Arizal. But when the Leshem says that it's Kipshuto, it doesn't mean that it's a different understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light in the world. It simply means that the entirety of the Kabbalah of the Arizal needs to be interpreted Kipshuto, like we saw last week, because otherwise we lose the purpose of the Kabbalah of the Arizal. So yes, it's literal, but it's literal in a way that is not a removal, God forbid, or a siluk, God forbid, or an absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, but it's literal in the sense that it is a further expression of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the impossible sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol is covering himself, so that the covering is nothing but what it is coming to cover. That the Tzimtzum and all of existence, as we come to understand it in its true essence, is nothing but the animating and annihilating light of Ein Sof itself, Kavyachol. And just because it's the yahrzeit of Rabbi Nassan, Nimmer of Zchusi Agen Aleinu, the Taban Mufak of Rabbi Nachman, We can see this sugya very much in the sugya of Rabbi Nachman as well in Torah Samach Daled, where Rabbi Nachman brings down the essential paradox of the Tzimtzum, that on the one hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light is perpetually annihilating and infinite, and there's no space devoid of that light. But on the other hand, for the sake of existence, there must be a space that is devoid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in Torah Samach Daled and Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman doesn't miyashev the sugya. He doesn't answer the sugya, but he points out that it is part of the what we call the apikorsis of the Chalal HaPanui, the impossible questions of the Chalal HaPanui that cannot be answered until a future time, where we gain the ability to contain two opposites, Shnei Hafachim Benosa Echad, like the Leshem said, within our minds. The Rabbi Nachman says explicitly that the Tzimtzum, the deepest secret of the Tzimtzum, is like the Arbe. It's like the locust, which is the gematria of Yitzchak, the gematria of true Gevura, which is Kahadin Kamsa Dilavusha Mineyube, like the locust whose exoskeleton is nothing but an inversion of its internal essence. So that which appears to be concealing on the outside is nothing but a further iteration of the unlimited nature of the inside. And Rabbi Nassan's Chusya Ganalenu in Likutei Tfilos, in Tfilos Samach Daled, on the Torah of Samach Daled, he's miyashev what his Rabbi Nachman couldn't be miyashev in Torah Samach Daled. In Torah Samach Daled, Rabbi Nachman leaves the question of Tzimtzum b'she'ela. It's a teku. It's something that can only be answered in the future. But Rabbi Nassan is not happy enough with that. Rabbi Nassan says in his Tefillah, Adon Kol, master of everything, le'ela mikula v'le'im laminach, above everything with nothing above it. Memale kol almin besovev kol almin, saturating all worlds and surrounding all worlds. La'ela mikol almin, above all the worlds, v'tchos mikol almin, ubein kol almin, above all worlds, below all worlds, and in between all worlds. V'leis asar panim minach, with no space devoid of you. So here Rabbi Nassan is paskening the true shita of his Rabbi Nachman, that although it's paradoxical and impossible to say, in truth, there is no space devoid of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At barasa olamecha mikedem. You have created your world from the primordial origin, b'ritzoncha hatov, in your desire to do good, b'rachamecha harabim v'chastecha hagadolim, in your infinite mercy and your true kindness, kedei legalos rachmanusecha ba'olam, in order to disclose your mercy within the world. And Rabbi Nassan continues and he says, and because of the deep love and compassion that you have on us, you desire to disclose your goodness and your mercy within the world. You have kavyachol, limited your light. You have concealed your light, and you have removed your infinite light. And you removed your light to the sides. And you have created a vacant space. And within that voided space, you have created all of creation. From the beginning until the end. In order that we have the capacity to understand you and have some sort of relationship with you. What Rabbi Nassan is describing in this tefillah is what the Leshem is coming to show. Yes, Tzimtzum is kipshuto. Yes, it actually took place, just like everything else in the Kabbalah of the Arizal took place. But it took place in a way that is devoid of our ability to understand, because in truth, the Tzimtzum is nothing but a further revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu disclosing himself and revealing himself within limitation for the sake of Bechira and for the sake of disclosing that even limitation itself is part and parcel of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Next week, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to be coming on to a new sugya, which is going to be a further shlav in the Leshem Shevo B'Chaloma. We're going to be discussing the duality and the binary existence of chasadim and gvuros, of kindness and harshness, of fire and water, of light and darkness, of kalim and or, that abide within existence, and showing how they're nothing but a dual representation of a deep unity that cannot be expressed in any way other than duality.